Thought pink polos I hurt the rock before Cam got the shit to pop. The doors is closed. I felt like bad boy street.
Hello everyone, what's good, what's poppin'? It's your girl Caroline back again with another video, and welcome to Wigology 101. We are getting down to the basics today because I have a updated plucking and bleaching routine. Plucking and bleaching is the key to get the most scalpiana realistic look. You see how I'm easily parting the hair and it's looking like it's coming in my scalp? That's because of my updated bleaching routine, which I'm really excited to show you guys. Like the results, ooh, chef kiss. Literally the studio lights were not giving justice. This is my wig out in the sun. As you can see, it's looking like it's my real hair. I was really impressed with this, I'm not gonna lie. The wig I'm working with today is from WestKissHair company. This is a 26-inch straight unit. It is a 13x6 frontal, y'all. So I got that really deep middle part going on, and this is a very thick 250% density wig. And of course, the specs and links for all that will be down in the description box if you're interested in purchasing this unit for yourself. But with that said, class, okay, get your notebooks out, sit back, relax, and let's get into today's video. First stop on our customization checklist is the bleaching of our knots. So let's get into my updated bleaching routine. I love to make my videos as educative and informative as possible so you leave feeling like you learned something. So it's only right for me to take a moment to just kind of pause and talk about knots and what exactly are them and why do we bleach them. Typically, when you look at the root of your lace frontal or lace closure, whatever it may be, those little black dots that you see at the grid, the base of the wig, those are the knots because the hair is hand tied one by one into those little holes and they are tied off into a knot to secure it. A knot is exactly what it sounds like. It is a literal knot of the hair being tied to the bottom of the lace. Now, depending on how big and small these knots are tied, having these little black dark dots on your lace can be very hard to give that scalp illusion. So we like to use bleach to help just take the knot from a dark color to a more blonde color, which gives it an illusion of it disappearing into a scalp versus knots on a lace. So with that said, if you have 613 blonde hair, do not bleach those knots because the whole point of this process is to turn the hair to a blonde color. If your wig's already blonde and you're bleaching the knots, you're going to just damage the hair a lot more and it's going to shed extremely, which also brings to the fact that be careful. Bleaching is a chemical process and it can cause your frontal to shed over time. So I always try to make sure I'm doing it as effectively and safe as possible. With that said, let's get back to it. The reason why I'm calling this my updated bleaching routine is because I have found a new favorite bleaching powder. This is from Ion. I don't know the brand exactly, but I will link it down below. I got it from Sally's. I've seen this product all over TikTok. I really like this bleach versus the other ones I've tried because I feel like it is very fast working and it's effective. Like it gets those knots. This is the first product I've used that it's gotten a good percentage of my knots in a short amount of time of processing. And I like it because it comes with this nice little purple gray tone to it, which helps with the undertones that you might get when it comes from bleaching knots from dark to blonde color. And I like whenever my products come with a scoop. So here I'm just going in with about 1.5 scoops. I'm using more than I normally do because this is a 13x6 frontal, so I have a lot of surface area to cover. If you're doing a closure, you honestly need like half of this. If you're doing a regular frontal, 1 scoop is enough for you. To mix my bleach, I'm using a 30 volume developer. The box says you can use either a 30 or 40 volume developer. Since I wanted something that's not going to be too fast so I can keep an eye on it, because if you use 40 volume versus the 30, the knots will bleach a lot faster. But as a beginner or just in general, it can be a little bit too fast and you fried the hair. So I feel like 30 is just a safer option. When it comes to bleaching, the key here is really getting the right consistency in your product. You want your bleaching solution to be thick enough where it sits on top of the knots only and it doesn't start to drip down into the hairline, because we don't only want to bleach the knots. We're not trying to bleach the actual hair. I went ahead and poured in about 1.5 scoops as well of the developer. So I'm doing basically a 1-to-1 ratio of powder versus developer. But I would say someone starting off, just pour like a little bit and mix it and slowly work your way into the right consistency. You want something that's going to be nice, creamy, and spreadable, but it's also not liquidy and runny. So I always like to make sure I've mixed everything properly, and I like to take my little mixing brush and I tip it over to see if the product is going to be dripping. And as you can see, the product was almost thick enough, but it did drip a bit. So I went in and added just a little bit more powder just to help thicken it up. but at the same time, you don't want it to be too thick where it's not going to be able to cover up those knots and it's just sitting at the bottom of the lace. So it's really a balancing dance between thick and creamy. Now that I have the right consistency in the bleaching solution, we're ready to go and bleach our wig. Now before I go to actually apply the bleach, I like to get some hairspray, water, anything just to help me push back the hairline, because you don't want to mistakenly get bleach on the front of the hair. So I'm just using some Got2b spray right here, and I'm spraying the front and I'm brushing all the hair to the very back so I do not mistakenly get bleach on top of it. To help me apply my bleach easier, I like to just simply tuck the wig inside out, like fold it like this, and just be careful of making sure the lace is propped up a little bit where it's not touching the rest of the bundle so I don't mistakenly drip any bleach into the actual hair. Now to apply my bleach, I like to use a wooden popsicle stick. I like using popsicle sticks because I feel like I can kind of control the pressure and how much bleach I'm applying with a popsicle stick versus using the hair mixing brush you saw earlier. You can use anything to mix and apply your bleach, just do not use anything metal. You can use plastic, glass, wood, silicone, just no metal, because the metal will interact with the bleaching process and it's going to give you not the best results at the end. When I apply the bleach, I always like to start from the back of the frontal because I've noticed that the knots in the back of the lace are usually much bigger and take a longer time to process. Kind of like when you're relaxing your hair, you always gotta do the back first because the back is coarser. Same thing, so I start from the back and work my way to the top. The thing with bleaching your knots is you want to apply enough pressure where the bleach is not just sitting at the bottom and it's kind of like slightly peeking through to cover up the knots at the top where we see. But at the same time, you don't want to push it too much where it starts to run. Because my thing when I first started I started bleaching wigs, I was always so scared of applying too much pressure. I don't want to like ruin my wig, so I wouldn't apply enough pressure and the bleach was just literally just sitting at the bottom. So the knots on the top, it didn't even look like the hair was bleached at all because it didn't bleach the top part of the knots, if that makes sense. So it's about finding a delicate balance. So I always just like to take a moment to pause and check. Okay, so let me see. So can you see how like the knot, like the bleach is like coming, it's like you can't see those dots. The bleach is coming up and like it's covering the root of the hair. You see that? Let me see, can you see that? That is what you want. You don't want to be able to still see those dots at the bottom. The bleach should be like, you know, coming up and covering all those dots at the bottom. That's how you get a really effective bleached knot. Okay, now that we've fully covered, it's an interesting color. I've never seen bleach this color, but I'm assuming this purplish color is supposed to help cancel out that brassy tone. So, okay, interesting. So now we're going to see what I meant, like how like I literally cannot see those black dots at all. Like the bleach is literally seeping through and covering up the top. That's what you want, but you don't want it to start creeping all the way up here into the hair. You want it to just sit down there. Just try my best to carefully put this foil under the wig. Using foil just helps the reaction time like fasten, and it helps make sure everything is like evenly reacting at the same time. So when it comes to how long I like to let my bleach sit and process, I never give an exact time because it's different depending on what type of bleaching product you're using. Today I'm using something different. In the box says I should give it 35 to an hour. And what kind of hair it is. Some hair is like super reactive and sensitive, and once you put bleach, like in 10 minutes the hair is bleached. Some is very stubborn, takes an hour. But I always say just give yourself like a good little, I would just put 10-minute, I just do 10-minute timer intervals. So I come back every 10 minutes to check the hair, and I just want to see that the knots have gone from a black color to a very like blonde color. But I never try to go over an hour, especially depending on what type of developer I'm using. Like I'm using 40 volume developer. Honestly, 45 minutes is the most I will wait, and that's like I'm really like the knots are super stubborn. It's better to just do it in 2 rounds and keep it on for a very long time and fry your hair. So yeah, I'm gonna come back in about possibly, I'll just show you how the hair is looking. I guess for comparison purposes, I'm gonna show you guys how the hair is looking every 10 minutes. Okay, so this is the knots 10 minutes in, and I don't know if you can notice already, but there is some blonde starting to come up on the roots. It's more like an orange copper, like a penny blonde. I like it to be have like a little bit of a yellow in it. So I'm gonna let it, I feel like if I come back in another 10 to 15, it should definitely be ready to be washed out. Here we are actually 20 minutes later, and the hair has definitely bleached. I don't know if you can see at the bottom, those knots have turned from a dark color to an actual blonde, brassy type of shade. The reason why I say I really like this bleaching product is because I've never been able to get my knots fully thoroughly bleached within 30 minutes the way it did with these. So I do like this bleaching product a lot. I feel like it's very effective and gets the job done. So now that it's been 30 minutes, my knots are fully bleached. I'm going to go ahead and wash out the knots. Once I have thoroughly rinsed out the bleach from the hair, I like to go in with a neutralizing shampoo to just make sure I'm stopping all of the chemical processing going on. I wash this throughout the lace, and I also make sure I take the shampoo and wash through the hair, because sometimes you might get some bleach that just lingers from the washing into the hair, and I don't want to mistakenly have like lingering bleach in my hair, because it can cause the hair to weaken and shed over time. Here are the results from the bleaching. As you can see, those knots are definitely bleached. Now, instead of black dots at the base, it's more yellowish blonde, giving an illusion that it's coming out of your scalp versus coming out of a lace, which is exactly what we're going for. Next step is toning of these knots. Sometimes when you're bleaching hair in general, when you're going from a dark black color to a blonde shade, there's some unwanted undertones we can get. As you can see, this wig is kind of giving a yellowy orange undertone. It's just the scalp is shouting at us, and we want to neutralize it. So to cancel out the orange tone, I'm using this blue shampoo from the Tanaje P. Harris line. I also got this from Sally. Blue is a great color for canceling out orange tones. So I just go ahead and saturate the lace with the blue shampoo, and I let it sit on there for another 5 minutes before washing it out. I know some of you are thinking, is toning the knots necessary? Do I have to do this step? Can I skip it? You can skip toning the knots. Only thing is that it's just going to make the knots, depending how bad the undertones are, the scalp of your wig will be shouting. It's going to be very Donald Trumpy, just an orange scalp, and you don't want an orange scalp. But you can go ahead and use makeup, concealer, something to help just camouflage the orangeness. So yes, you can skip toning, but if you do happen to be already in the beauty supply store, just go ahead and grab you some blue or purple shampoo. Here's a look at the lace right after it's been fully washed of the blue tone. And so as you can see, the knots are not as orange and yellow as it was earlier. Everything's a lot more neutralized, and it's looking a lot more like scalp. And that is it for our bleaching process. Now let's get into our plucking. When it comes to my plucking, once I get the wig onto the mannequin head and I've secured everything down with the T-pin, if the wig is not already parted in the middle part like how it came with this wig, I will always make sure to part it right down in the middle, and then I go in with my hot comb in a very hot 500 degrees Fahrenheit, and I take my time to press everything nice and sleek to the back. The reason why I'm pressing the hair out is so I can see the hairline in its truest form. So you really want to take your time to just slide that hot comb into the hair and press the back of it so you're getting those roots and the knots nice and flat. See, now I can see the hairline exactly for what it is, and it's going to make plucking a lot easier, because when you're plucking, you kind of have to be able to see the hairline to know exactly what you're doing and what look you're going for. Now that I'm able to properly assess the hairline, I can see that the hairline was slightly pre-plucked in the front. I don't know if you can tell, but in the front there's a little bit of thinning going on, which is the whole point of plucking. So the company did help me out and pluck the front a bit. So here I'm just going to go ahead and just part out the front section that's already been plucked. Regardless of my wig coming pre-plucked or not, I always pull out the front section of hair. I always like to start my plucking behind the front of the hairline. I've found parting out some hair and starting from the back helps me, one, not get a lot of bald spots, and two, if you're someone who does baby hairs, doing it this way will allow you to actually have baby hairs to play with later. If you ever notice when you pluck your wig and you're trying to do the baby hairs, there's so much like thinning and gappage, it doesn't make sense. That's probably because you're plucking way too much in the front. So I always say, just start behind the front of the hairline, save the front for last. Now that I've pulled out the front, I'm going in with my Revlon Diamond Slant Tip Tweezer. I've tried a lot of tweezers in my day, and I feel like this brand especially is the one that's worked the best for me. I feel like it's not too sharp, but still sharp enough to pull those knots from the root, but at the same time, it's not going to pull a hole in my lace. Sometimes your tweezer could be a little bit too sharp, that's why you're getting a hole in your lace, or it's too dull and it's not actually pulling the hair out from the roots, because you've got to pull those knots out from the root. Now, when you're plucking your wig, you want to be mindful where the middle part is. That's why I always make sure my wigs are parted down the middle, because you don't want to actually pluck in between that middle part spacing. Plucking in the middle part spacing is just going to make your middle part unintentionally wide. This really only applies to the middle part. If you're trying to do a side part, whatever other style, you'll be just fine, but it's just the middle that I've learned that gets affected if I pluck on that side mistakenly. Now into the actual plucking. So when it comes to plucking, I like to think in my head, pluck, skip, pluck, skip. So I pluck a space, skip the next space, pluck a space, skip the next space. This way I'm making sure I'm not plucking continuously in the same area. When I pluck, I'm going in a backwards dragging motion. So you know when you pull out your chin hairs, you pull downward. I am dragging my tweezers back, not doing it up and down. I'm doing a back dragging motion. This is going to ensure that I am, one, making little hairline strokes in between the hair, and I'm also pulling those knots out from the root. It is important to make sure you are pulling out those it is important to make sure you're pulling out the hair from the root. So those blonde knots that we bleached, you should be seeing little blonde knots as the hair is coming out. If you're not pulling the hair out from the roots, it's going to leave those knots behind, and it's not going to give a clean plucked look, and it's not going to give a very hairline effect. Once I've made my way down that section, I'm going back in and I'm trying to tweeze deeper into the hairline. So my tweezer is no longer at the front where it was. I'm taking it deeper into the back and trying to thin out that, and doing the same thing, pluck, skip, and just creating little gappages at random spots. Do make sure you are taking your time to pluck deeper into the hairline and not just the front, for you to get that super natural coming out of your scalp look. Sometimes if the knots are really hard to get, I will just go ahead and part the hair section by section and do that as my way of plucking deeper into the hairline. But the knots in this way were very small. It was easy for me to grab the hair without having to part each section through. If you're a beginner and you're new to plucking, I say one, work in sections. Working sections really helps you not get overwhelmed and makes you pay attention to each detail properly. And two, I say less is more. You don't have to pluck your wig to perfection on the mannequin head. You can like do a little bit light plucking to your comfortability, install the wig, be like, oh, okay, it's a little bit thick here, I'm gonna pluck there. That is a lot better to do than plucking it to perfection or over plucking it on your mannequin head, and now your wig is over plucked and you can't do anything about that. So work in sections and less is more. And my last tip for beginners, get you a little Pinterest, Instagram plucked hairline inspo, like a picture of someone, or even just this wig, someone's plucked wig, and look at that hairline while you're plucking and try your best to get your plucking to mimic that. That's kind of how I've learned what I needed to do when it came to plucking, because I think the hardest part for me or beginners is just knowing what you're going for. Like, what exactly is my wig supposed to look like? So having a hairline in front of you to kind of use as a guide when it comes to plucking really helps you a lot. As you can see, really the main thing I'm doing is trying to just create little gappages between each hairline. The thinner the better. You don't want to create really thick gaps. Once I finish plucking throughout the hairline, I'm just going in and pushing all the hair back to the front so I can press everything back and assess the hairline again. When it comes to plucking the front, I don't like to do too much, so I just try to do my best to keep my tweezers very pressed together nice and tight so I can pull just a small amount of hair and just create very fine, thin gaps in between each section of hair. When I say I'm creating little gaps between the hair, it's what I mean. So as you can see right here is a part that already been plucked, and down there has not been plucked. And you see the difference, how there's little gaps in between the hair, giving it that very plucked natural look. That's essentially what I'm trying to do. So I get my tweezers and I close them, squeeze them very tight so I can pull the smallest amount of hair, because you want to get fine hairline stroke, not fat, wide, buck teeth kind of gaps. So I just go in and pull the smallest amount of hair, pluck, skip, and work my way down the front of the hairline. That's how you get that very natural hairline effect. I feel like I've said hairline so many times. I need a better word. I can't find the word to explain what I'm saying, but visually, I hope it's making sense. And there you go. Now you can see the hair is definitely looking like it's coming out of someone's scalp. It's not as dense in the front, which is the look I'm going for. You could even go ahead and pluck this hair deeper into the hair. This was a 13x6 frontal, so it was very dense in the middle, but I was not trying to pluck that deep. But you can definitely go in and pluck deeper if you want to go for very, very like natural hairline. So I'm just going to go ahead and pluck the other side off camera, and I'll show you guys our finished look. And here is the finished product. You can see the hairline, she's plucked, the knots, they're bleached, and it's giving a scalpiana. And now our wig is ready to be installed. Even with the wig on my head, it was giving very much scalp. Like, ooh, I was so excited to install this wig because I know I did my thing with the plucking and the bleaching. Installation was quite straightforward. I did my standard glueless install. If you're looking for a detailed tutorial on how I do those, I have lots of very in-depth videos showing how I gluelessly install my wigs. But after I installed the wig, this is the final look. But here you are with the finished look. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you found it informative, helpful, or just simply entertaining. And if you did, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you guys in another one. And peace out, Girl Scouts. Goodbye.